We are live. You're correct there, Paul. Live on a Thursday evening with another great guest on tonight, who we'll bring on a little bit later. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks, Les. Absolutely full on day today. I need to tell people in chat, and I can't see how many's in at the moment, but I need to tell people that Les rang me about 7 minutes ago, says, "Where are you?" It's because it's just been a bit full on. I'm like everybody else's lives, it's been a bit hectic, but good to see you, Les. And I'm looking forward to speaking to our guest stroke speaker, because that's what we're going to get from this fella tonight, because I jumped on his website and what they're about, and the amount of detail is put into stuff. It's amazing, but we'll do that in a minute. So what you been up to?
Editing, Paul, and
eating. Well, you want to cut down on that.
And I've just been telling our guest tonight how struggling with some of the software don't behave as it wants to do, and you've been through that process, Paul, and boy, does it tax your brain, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I'm still on the Joker phase here. So you said eating. You're struggling with software. You need to just go up a few sizes, Les, and then it'll fit. Yeah. Okay. So no, I'm only joking. So let's just stop that. So let's have a look in chat. Yeah, I know you've been busy, and you put that short out, the ghost story.
Yeah,
well received.
I hadn't read some of the comments yet, but the first few I'd read last night, I was well pleased, and thanks for all the great comments. And don't forget to like the video and to like the channel if you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I've just coming across the chat tonight, Paul. I know we've got at least one new person on. Welcome to the show, Catkins. The first time to Truth Proof.
Yeah, and absolutely brilliant. And I'll go through a few names here, and I can see Rod, Jack Hills, and Jack. I know you rang earlier. I would, like I've just said, I've just been dashing about, so we'll have a chat tomorrow, all being well. Dragonborn, Catkins. Let's have a look. Martin Abbas. Enjoying your holiday, Martin. We wish we were there as well. Scott Lawrence, Sober Carper. Let's have a look. Karen Behrman. I've just got Tino, Andrew Sheehan, Mike Ox Brown. Oh, that's Enigma. Ian Linney, good to see you today, mate. Listen to this. Linney managed to film something that were absolutely, I'm not just saying amazing lightly. I'm blown away by what he's managed to catch on thermal camera. And we sat here earlier, probably about 3 hours ago, and just we're looking at this footage that he'd got, and we might put a little bit up. Give us a thumbs up, Lenny, if you're happy to go with that, and we'll put a little bit of that up on Sunday. And Sally Bush, good to see you, Sally. Simon Riley, let's have a look. And I don't want to say Catkins again. I've done that, haven't I? I've just said it again, haven't I? Amanda Matthews, let's have a look. So look, we've got to stop. There's 124 people. I've probably said 24. Simon Riley, Chris O'Neill, I've started on Steve's story today. Chris, you can tell him that. So I had a look at it earlier today. And let's jump into it, Les.
Yeah, brilliant. And let's have a look. We are ready for our guest for tonight. We'll bring in Mr. Dave Hodrien.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
Hello.
Good evening. Hi, both.
Yeah. Well, absolutely blown away by amount of work and research that you put into things, David. But I'll just say a few words about you. And I've got to say that David's thorough and is a little bit like me in that respect, sort of overdoes things. And he sent me 3 bios, and I've chose the shortest bio. And I don't normally read them. Go on, let's
just before you do that, what I'm going to do at this point is do not what I normally do and disappear until any questions come through. And just to remind you that Lee is doing the moderating tonight, Lee Roscoe. Thanks for that, Lee. And I'm sure Alison will jump on later on when she gets time to come on. But I'll disappear and I'll leave you guys to it.
Excellent. Right. Great to see you, David. So we'll just do the little intro for David, but I think it's more than worth it, because I've got to admit I was quite amazed when I looked on his website today and looked at what they're about and amount of work that Dave's put into all of this. So David Hodrien is the chairman, lead investigator for the Birmingham UFO Group, and the United Kingdom deputy representative of the God, you're taxing my tongue here. International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, ICER. That would have been easier. He writes regularly for UFO Truth Magazine and is a designer of UFO Wave, a card and game board, a card and game theme board game. You can fill us in on that later because I've probably said that wrong.
Sure.
But Dave, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
No, you're welcome. And I'm all over the place tonight because I've literally just arrived minutes before we went on air because it's just been a bit hectic. But before we jump into cases and what you're about, tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved in this subject, please.
Yeah, I mean, it goes right back to my childhood, really. So as many of the people listening in will attest to, just had a genuine interest with paranormal and just mysteries of the world since an early age. And I remember being back in my childhood, just reading, I think Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World was one of the first major books that I remember reading, and checking out all these creepy stories and sitting there after dark, reading them with torch and things like this. And it was just absolutely fascinating to me. The UFO, my fascination with the UFO specifically began in early teens, I suppose. Started to delve into UFO cases in more depth. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized just the amount of stunning cases on record. And I was just thinking to myself that all these cases, they can't all be fabricated hoaxes. They can't all be misidentifications. There's got to be something real to this going on.
But were they a trigger then, Dave, at an early age? You're looking into them in your teens. So something's got to have influenced you, and if it's not your own sighting, is it some I don't know, some family member that's had an avid interest that's pushed that onto you?
Not specifically, no. It was just generally just fascination to learn more about the subject. When I got to age of, I think it was 16, so UFO Magazine at the time, superb publication, of course. Many of you will be familiar with that. Graham Birdsl's classic monthly magazine. I started reading that, and they had their yearly conference, and it turns out their yearly conference was in Solihull, Birmingham, which is where I live. Well, back then I couldn't drive or anything, but as it was nearby, I was able to get in by bus. Went there with some friends and my brother, I believe. And that was the first time I went to a UFO related conference, and I saw speakers for the first time talking about the subject. And I thought back then, I was absolutely fascinated, and I thought how amazing it would be to be on the front lines of this and reach out to witnesses and maybe have experiences myself along the way with it all. And it remained that way for many, many years, just a genuine fascination with the subject, watching lots of documentaries, reading books, magazines, the works.
So take us to 2007, because that's when you joined the Birmingham UFO Group, isn't it?
It was, yes. So I wasn't always the chairman for the group. The original chairmen, Craig and Mark, there were a couple of guys from Quinton and in Birmingham. They put the group together initially, and I was one of the first members to sign up for the group. I just thought it was really good that there was a group that was starting up within easy reach, basically, and I could just go along and meet people with like-minded views on the subject, chat with people about it. And the initial meetings of Birmingham UFO Group, they essentially took place in the corner of a pub.
That's what I was going to ask you next.
Yeah.
Take us back to what it was like in 2007 when, before all of this, before we were all just using us phones and communicating, before actual communication.
Absolutely,
what were them meetings like?
So back then it was just face to face. So we just met up in the corner of a pub. There's a number of tables that arranged, and we just got down there and just had a good old chinwag. And obviously everything becoming virtual these days. Everybody talks via the internet as we're doing right now. But back then it was really nice having that kind of face to face thing. That face-to-face community is something that has remained with Birmingham UFO Group and continues to be an active part of the group today. And it's a part of the group that I'm very, very proud of. So those initial meetings for the first few months took place in the pub, and then eventually they started renting out the function room alongside the pub, the Amber Tavern it was in Quinton, for those familiar with the area. And they rented out the function room, so we started having the meetings in there, and they started to get in speakers and that sort of thing.
And during that period, because I'm saying this because we've done similar things with Yorkshire UFO Society and what have you. Did you ever get people dropping into the group, kind of transient, who came in once, hit you with an incredible story, then you never saw them again? Did you ever get that happening?
Occasionally, but it was actually an incredible story from three lads who'd come along to the early meetings that became the first case that I actively investigated for Birmingham UFO Group. Essentially, they'd had a fascinating sighting. I can go into depth of it if you will. I mean, there's so many different cases.
Well, this isn't staged.
Yeah.
Does anybody think we planned this? It's not. But tell us about it.
It's absolutely fine. Yeah, I'll just give you brief details of it. The case had taken place in Kings Winford, which is an area in North Birmingham, kind of towards Dudley Way. And essentially, the four of them, 4 witnesses involved, and most weekends they would just go and hang out at this area known as Ridgewood in Kings Winford, a sort of triangular area of woodland. And it was up on a hill with a view off to Kimver and Enville off to the west. So they're up there on this hill and just having a bonfire, just sitting around relaxing and everything. They'd had a couple of drinks, but I don't think alcohol had anything to do with what took place. What they essentially saw. Start in the distance, they could see just a combination of lights, just a cluster of lights, which obviously at a distance they're just thinking it's just an aircraft, right? And it's just moving along, and they're thinking maybe it's a helicopter. Sort of red, white, also blue colors in there, but which you don't obviously get on normal aircraft. You get that lime green color. Yeah. But as they realized it was kind of heading towards them and heading their direction, and as it got closer, they realized it wasn't a helicopter or an aircraft of any kind. What they described seeing was a black octagonal shaped craft with white and red lights in the base of it. Now, obviously, quite an unusual shape there. You don't get that many octagonal-shaped UFO sightings. And this thing came right in over the clearing, sort of slowed down temporarily, and then sort of sped up and kind of moved off. And they followed it to the trees and continued to watch it as it headed away across the area of Dudley. And they could see it for at least half an hour afterwards, or at least they thought it was the object. At some point, they might have switched and been watching a helicopter they didn't, but they could see this light and they thought that was still it moving around. Well, this is a really compelling case. And these guys are down the group talking about having just had this experience. So I thought it'd be amazing to go out to the actual location where it happened with the witnesses. This was me not being an investigator at that point.
Well, you were, but in a it's always been there with a bit looks of it, hasn't it?
Absolutely, it has. Yeah, and this was the creation of Birmingham UFO Group. I suppose was my driving force to become an active investigator. I quite liked the idea of investigating for an organisation of some kind, rather than just being sort of Dave Hodrien, UFO investigator, which obviously I could have done for decades. But essentially, when Craig and Mark found out that I was going to go to the location where this case had happened with the witnesses, they approached me and said, would you like to write up a report on the case for the group? And I said, yeah, I'd be really interested in doing that. So I didn't warn the witnesses I was going to do this, but on the night when we went out there, I took each of them aside, interviewed them in depth about what they'd seen, and also got them to do a drawing of that. That became a case report. It was very, very compelling. You could see from the drawings and the similarities between what they were describing, all the little anecdotal details, all sorts of stuff. It was very compelling indeed. That case is still on the Birmingham UFO Group website, as will be any case we talk about tonight. So I wrote up that initial report, and from that point on, Craig and Mark took me on as the official investigator for Birmingham UFO Group. Yeah. And those initial years were really, really busy because they put out the creation of Birmingham UFO Group, and it was spread around online and that. So a lot of people, especially in the Birmingham area, jumped on this and got in touch, and we had an absolute raft of sightings. Now, some of those were Chinese lanterns. There was lots of orange orb sightings back in 2008 to 2010, and you can see that drop off over time as obviously later on Chinese lanterns, due to the fire risk, etc. They're not really illegal. You can still buy them, but they're not widely sold, especially in shops today. So because of that, we get a lot less orange orb sightings. But sorry,
just as a afterthought, really, the Chinese lanterns, Yorkshire UFO Society back in, I can't even remember the year, but we got this great big manor house on North Yorkshire Moors called Barmore, absolutely fabulous, and a group of people came. And one of the group thought it would be a good idea to set off Chinese lanterns. What a mistake! It weren't my idea. I'm not even going to say that it were remotely promoted by me, because it just weren't.
Yes.
But this house, this great big manor house in middle of nowhere on North Yorkshire Moors, they call it Barmore. People want to Google it. Great big eaves that stuck out from face of the wall, probably 2 foot. And Chinese lantern went up underneath it. and I'd got visions of just setting that house on fire. It was just crazy.
Yeah,
and that happened. That was frightening. And everybody's just thinking it was funny. Some people couldn't see consequences, but Chinese lanterns, I think they've been the bane of ufologists, haven't they? Really, not just for that reason, but
they have indeed. Yeah, they have indeed.
Not only that, Dave, but also, what do you think to not the excuses, but the explanations made up for sightings? Chinese lanterns was a staple explanation.
It was
in 2009, 10.
Yeah, I mean the thing is they would lump everything in with the lantern theory. Yeah, I've dealt with quite a number of cases over the years where the object has been seen and it's an amber glowing sphere or orb, if you want to, and it's performed incredible maneuvers. I've dealt with cases where these orange orbs have followed vehicles over a number of miles, turning with the car. I've dealt with cases where they've sat completely still in windy air conditions and then shot away really, really fast. And absolutely classic maneuvering capabilities of some of the other craft types that we see. So I wouldn't say that, it would be wrong to say that every single orange orb is a Chinese lantern. Yeah. But quite a few of them were.
To be quite honest, if that were the case, we may as well give up looking for unexplained phenomena on East Yorkshire cliff tops and North Yorkshire, because a lot of it is orange spheres of light. Have you got any cases that you'd like to share with us of orange orbs or any in particular? I don't want to take you out of your stride.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean the orange orbs thing. I mean, as I mentioned, there was a case I investigated. I'm trying to remember where it was. It was a taxi driver. So yeah, there's so many cases over the last 16 years. So I've been dealing with this subject now. I've actually investigated. I've been counting them up. It's not like a tally. I'm not trying to do some sort of, "Way, look at me, I've investigated this many cases." What I'm in the process of doing at the moment is building a database of all of the incidents out of all of the cases that myself and the other investigators of Birmingham UFO Group have documented over the last 16 years. Now, this is something that we should have started a lot sooner, which I wish I started it right back in 2007, but that didn't happen. So I believe now we've got a wealth of information, and once that's categorized, I'm planning to do a lot of charts and things like that off it. And I think it'll get some really, really good stats as to what's going on, aside from the fact that it makes Birmingham look like the biggest UFO hotspot the world's ever seen, because I'm plotting it all out on a map. So.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's going to look like that for Dave Hodrien, and it's going to look like that for Paul Sinclair. Yeah. It's going to look like every investigator in their respective area is going to think that they've got it. Yes. And it just shows, I think, Dave, that this phenomena is everywhere. But it just takes a concentrated effort of people to expose what's happening, doesn't it? And you're doing that. What do you think these orange orbs are, Dave?
Okay, so essentially, it seems to be a mix of things. So some of the cases I've dealt with seem to be solid spherical objects here, and they're not always orange in color. I've dealt with sort of glowing white spheres. Very clearly defined edges. Sometimes they might have other lights on them, like sort of little lights on the front or on the rear of the object. So implying that it's a spherical shaped craft of some kind, like a structured craft. Yeah. But there are other cases I've dealt with where it looks more like some kind of energy, some kind of plasma energy or something, but it's acting intelligently. So it's performing maneuvers instead of randomly drifting. Because if you see an orange orb and it's just randomly drifting around, it's very likely, that that's going to be a lantern,
a lantern or a flare, or
or a flare, indeed, absolutely. But each of these different mundane explanations have their own particular characteristics. So a flare will not stay stationary in the air for a long period of time. For example, it'll drift down slowly. We actually had somebody fired off a flare at one of our sky watches. I remember this was going back to probably about sort of 2015, something like that. We did a skywatch out at Cannock Chase. We've been to Cannock Chase numerous times because of it's known for some decent UFO and other paranormal type activity. And we've actually had sightings of orange orbs on one of our more recent skywatches, which I'll go over in a minute. However, on this previous occasion, somebody decided it'd be a fun job to bring along a flare with them and run away from the group and just set it off in the distance around this woodland. Yeah, didn't fool me though. I was like, yeah, that's straight away, that's a flare. And
it's a great way of attracting some attention, isn't it? You know.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Oh, look, everybody, UFO.
What did you think to Cannock Chase then? Have you got anything?
Oh yeah.
I realise when I'm throwing a random one out about Cannock, and you might not have anything about Cannock to share with us.
I've got things to share about everywhere, pretty much. So Cannock Chase, for those that don't know, it's an area with lots of different reports over the years. Some very, very impressive UFO incidents have occurred in the area, and also all sorts of other strange paranormal goings on, according to the stories that are out there. So for that reason...
It seems to have it all, doesn't it, Cannock Chase?
Yeah, it does,
it's multi-phenomena. So in the areas that you research, Dave, are you? I don't mean that this disrespectful, but do you? If somebody offered up a cryptid type sighting,
I've dealt with cryptid cases,
or poltergeist. Do you think no? I'm a UFO researcher. How do you deal with it?
No, not at all, because there's a direct correlation and link between different aspects of the phenomena, especially when you get more involved in the contact phenomena side of the subject, which I've got very heavily involved in. It's an area of particular fascination to me, and I've dealt with hundreds of contact cases from around the world in the last 16 years. And also held sort of support sessions for experiencers to come together and talk in enclosed environments, both online in ones and also live support sessions. So it's a particularly fascinating area for me. Now, most cases where the individuals experience contact is having what you would commonly call alien abductions, alien visitations. They will also describe having paranormal type activity in their vicinity again and again and again. And it's happening far too regularly for it not to be a factor. And it just seems to be this direct link with it. My views have changed over time, actually, with it. I know we're jumping around a bit.
I think this is good because if your views hadn't changed, it would show that you're not searching and looking under stones like we should be doing.
Yeah. So because it's a big puzzle, isn't it? We're always trying to find pieces of the puzzle and trying to find out more information about what's really going on with this subject. Yeah. But one of my views over recent years, in the early days of doing this, I thought definitely extraterrestrial. I thought, green men, well, call them what you will. Yeah, off-worlders coming here visiting us. I think it's far more complicated than that. I now kind of have the view that it's some kind of thing that masquerades in different forms to different people, and it's become a view that's talked of more and more in recent years. And there's a lot of aspects of the subject that cement that view. Yeah, I would agree. That would back that up. It's really, really interesting. And again, there's links with the UFO subject and contact and near-death experiences and also out-of-body experiences. There's all these links, and you always find these parallels between things and aspects that cross over into that. The same with psychic phenomena. So contact, absolutely massive link with psychic phenomena. The last time I did a count, and I'll be able to give a more accurate count once I built the database, whatever century I actually finished the thing. It's taken a lot of time. But essentially, when I did my count last time, in over half of the contact cases I'd looked into, that's hundreds of cases, the individual had talked about having one or more abilities that they would consider psychic in nature. So they might be having premonitions of future events, or be able to read people sort of empathically without.
So is that heightened abilities before and after, or before?
Mix, yeah, like some of the cases they'd say, I had these psychic type abilities since childhood. But then with contact, a lot of the time the cases go right back to their childhood as well. So it's very, very hard to differentiate what came first, whether the psychic abilities were some kind of after effect or even some kind of gift from the beings themselves, or whether it was something that they'd had innately and the beings were interested in them because of their
You're actually answering some of the questions I'm going to ask you, which is brilliant.
yeah.
Because they'd had innately, or do we all have it? And is it the contact that's opening our minds up and just expanding us to the reality of what's actually out there? So they may not have given us anything. I'd like to think that they have, but they may not have given us anything. Everything that we're capable of doing, maybe all in here.
Just hidden in there,
and it's a breath of fresh air, Dave, that you've said, like, your views on what this subject was and how it was getting here and interacting has changed. Because I think mine has. I don't think it has. I know mine has. And, and we no longer kind of look into the stars. Yeah. We're not closing that avenue down. But it's already here, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the cases on record go back, well, we know they go back hundreds of years, but also there's obviously historical evidence. Now, that's not my forte. I don't pretend to be any kind of expert on the ancient alien theories, etc. But it's fascinating to see these old cave paintings with what looks like craft and even abduction experiences taking place and things like that. And these are from thousands and thousands of years ago. So it looks like they've been here for a long, long time, perhaps living alongside us, but maybe they've always been here, right? But I think, as I said before, I think it's a very complicated subject, and I wouldn't dismiss any particular view. I think there's probably multiple origins to what's happening with this, because there's certainly multiple types of beings that are seen and reported. And I'm not talking about independent cases. There are quite a few cases out there where one particular type or species has been reported by somebody. Obviously, in a lot of cases, they won't even see the occupants at all. Yeah, it'll just be something up in the sky. Yeah, but in cases where they've seen the occupants, like contact incidents, you get the same types reported again, like absolute massive pattern. You know, hundreds and hundreds of cases reporting these same specific types that look quite different to one another, and to all intents and purposes, could be viewed as being completely separate species. Now, but I mean, whether they're working together or not, I mean, it seems to be the case. I've dealt with many, many cases where people have contact and see more than one different type of being, sometimes in the same experience. Sometimes they'll have numerous experiences throughout their life, and in some experiences it'll be one type, and then other experiences there'll be a different type. Again, the similarities again and again.
Do you think then, Dave, that they are more than one? Let's deal with one individual or individuals. Do you think they are experiencing one type, or is it one type that's presenting us different things? Do you think we're being tricked in some instances?
So you've got the screen memory phenomena, which those familiar with contact will know what I'm talking about with this. Essentially, the beings, especially the greys, seem to be able to mask their own appearance, and sometimes the appearance of the interior of the craft, or even the exterior of the craft. I've dealt with cases where people have seen sort of biplanes from the war and all sorts of things. Really, really interesting. Or have reported helicopters, and then later on they're under hypnosis, they describe seeing a domed disc-shaped craft. Now, why they're doing that, I mean, again, there's multiple possibilities, but it seems to be more prevalent in childhood age, and it's my personal belief that they are masking their appearance to appear in a form that's more palatable to the individual, so they won't be as frightened by what's taking place when they think back to it, if they have memories. I think it's very closely linked with the missing time phenomena. Yeah. As I say, this is we're jumping around a lot here, and it's such a complicated
I don't
subject.
mind, because in a moment, Dave, because I've in a way I've sort of created this jump around for the first nearly 30 minutes. So I want you to share whatever cases you want with us, because I'm amazed. I mean, first of all, well, we'll do it at 8, because Les will come on at 8 with some questions, and then we want to hear about where people can find information about you. But so share some cases with us, Dave, then. I've thought of over the years, as I said, dealt with hundreds of cases, covering all types of things, you know, ranging from a little light in the sky that's zipped away to full-blown repeated contact experiences. And some of the reports on those cases are absolutely massive in length, you know, or almost short books in length, some of them. So I've picked out a nice selection of cases here. This is the first time I've spoken on Truth Brief, so I thought I'd share with you some really stunning cases that have lots of different elements to them. It's not going to be the first time this, I can tell, because did you know I've got Tom What I know we've met before, we've sat together at conferences. Well, and not had in-depth conversations, by the way. I need to stress that to the audience, because nothing's pre-planned here. But Tom Waters has been telling me for ages, get David on, get Dave Hodrien on. So I can tell now that Dave Hodrien's going to be on here again. So share some cases with us, Dave.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, I thought with Halloween coming up, it'd be great to share with you one of the creepiest one of the creepiest contact-related cases that I've dealt with over the years. I hope I don't give anybody nightmares with this, because some of it's pretty unsettling stuff. But it's a fascinating incident. I'm going to cover several incidents from this repeat contact case. It's a case from up Glasgow, and the gentleman involved, his first name is Rob. Whenever I mention anybody's name, the witness has given my permission to share that, and you'll find it in the report. In a lot of cases, people cover up their details, and that's absolutely fine, but yeah, Rob, it's a repeat contact case. He's had experiences going right back to childhood, including ghost type experiences, psychic type things, some of the stuff we've been talking about, but I can't go through the whole case because that'll fill up the whole 2 hours. Let's have an outline of it. I'm looking forward to it. So what I wanted to first cover was an incredible dual abduction experience of himself and his older brother. Now, we've got the exact date for when this took place, and there's a specific reason for that. It happened on right back in 1971, Saturday, the 25th of November. Why do we have that exact date? The reason why we have this exact date is that Rob, for the first 30 years of his life, had been keeping his own diary of all the unusual, weird stuff that was going on in his life. Now, a lot of the time when I reach out to witnesses, I need to question them in depth. We go through all the cases. I try to take them back to childhood and all that. But with this, he had all this wealth of information, even drawings he'd done in there of these experiences, including what I'm about to share. So it's straight away from the off. It brought home the reality of this. He'd written this thing down decades before. I didn't need to ask him for drawings because he'd already added them. He just handed them on to me. And it's an incredible incident. And he was only 9 years old at the time, back in 1971. And on this particular night, his parents had gone out to some kind of music event, and his cousin was babysitting him and his older brother at their house. Now, they lived in the outskirts of Glasgow on a road, House Hill Muir Road, on the outskirts of Glasgow. And on that particular evening, the new gangster show, The Untouchables, the classic show, that was on. And he was going to be allowed to stay up and watch this at 7 o'clock in the evening. And he was really excited because all his friends are talking about it at school. Now, on that particular night, unfortunately, there was a delay in the programs so it had been pushed forward to 7:30. All these little anecdotal details, right? This is what brings home the reality to me when I talk with people. They come up with stuff, and it's just immediately obvious. This is what
people like, though, and this shows the depth of what
you're putting. So he's there, and he's arguing with his big brother and his cousin. They're trying to get him to go to bed. They're like, "It's on late. You're not going to be able to see it." And it's coming up to 7:30, and he's trying to stay up so he can watch the show. All of a sudden, there's this glaring white light comes in from outside, and it just floods the whole living room in bright white light. His cousin is really spooked out by this and tells them not to approach the window. But Rob is absolutely fascinated, and he wants to see where this white light's coming from. He runs over to the window, looks outside, and he doesn't see any object. There's no UFO craft or anything there. But on the ground, he can see this circular area of white light reflecting off the road, coming from something up out of view above in the sky. And it's moving slowly along the road, and it goes up the side of this building, and then it's moving off out of sight. And he wants to see more of this, so he pushes past his big brother, and against his cousin's wishes, just runs outside the front of the house and runs down, and he's now down outside at the end of the front garden, and he's looking around, and this light isn't there anymore. He looks off to his right, and further along the road, about sort of several houses further along, he sees a hovering, glowing white disc. It's down behind the roof of one of the houses, and the house has a pointed roof. He described it a bit like a kind of a cheese wheel with a slice cut out because of the point of the roof. That's what it reminded him of, and he could just see it there, and the brightness of the light coming from this thing, and it's just hovering motionless in the sky. At this point, his older brother runs outside too, and he comes alongside him, and they're standing there looking down the road at this disc behind this house, and they're absolutely fascinated, and the amount of brightness from it is bleeding out all the colour of the surroundings. And he said, looking down at his clothes, it was just in shades of grey, and all the vegetation all in grey because of the colour coming from this thing, the brightness of the light coming from it. So he turns around, he's looking at his brother, shrugging at each other, wondering what this is. He looks back round at the disc, and that's when he realizes it's no longer just him and his brother there. There's a being standing to his right. It's got its left hand on his right shoulder and is taller than him. They couldn't see its face because it was facing towards the disc, like them just staring in the direction of this disc. It was wearing a black shawl that completely covered its arms and legs down to the ground, and it had a completely bald head. They couldn't see its face, as I said, just this bald head. And it's staring towards the disc. It doesn't seem to communicate with them or anything like that. It's just there. Next thing he knows, no longer there. All of a sudden, him and his brother are surrounded in what appears to be a sphere of this glowing pinkish coloured energy, and it's all around them. Imagine they're inside this some sort of energy ball around them, and they're standing in exactly the same positions. What happens is this energy seems to start dissipating and breaking down around them, and through the gaps in it, they can see daylight. And as it clears, he realizes two things. He not only realizes it's now daylight instead of a sort of late evening time, but he's also no longer standing at the end of his front garden. They're in exactly the same position as they've been a second before. So them, no time's passed at all, but he now knows it's suddenly daylight. They found themselves halfway down this side path that was further down House Mill Road, a kind of linking path that went between the neighbouring road. And they're halfway down it. There's an electrical box down there, and they were right by that. Down by there, sitting down on the ground next to them, is this younger child playing with a toy truck, and he's just staring up at them. And so for all we know, he saw them like materialize out of thin air. We don't know what he saw.
So you don't think that he were part of this experience then?
No, I think it was probably just somebody else who was there down that side path, human, and he's just there looking at them, mouth agape. So we don't really know what he saw. Next second, there's a lady leaning out of the house that the disc had been behind. She's leaning out one of the windows, and she shouts out at them, and she says, "Are you the kids that have been missing all night?" And essentially, what we can gather from that is that probably the parents come back, found they weren't there, probably got in touch with the police. They're out looking around the local area for the lads, and they've gone missing. It was now the following morning. And you could see that from the fact it was now daylight. And we don't know the exact time that it was. Rob gets spooked out by everything that's happening. He wants to be back at his own house. So he runs down this side path and starts running back along House Mill Road towards the front of his house. As he runs, he feels the memories of what he's remembering literally vanishing from his mind. Now you've probably come across cases like this before. So we've got the missing time phenomena in many, many cases, and a lot of the time people just realize after the fact that an hour's gone by and they're like, what happened in that time? Don't know. With this, he could actually feel the memories leaving his mind. By the time he gets to the end of his front drive, he had no recollection of the incident at all. It had gone, and we can only assume that it had also gone from his brother's mind. Now, Rob says in the months following that, his father used to take him fishing, and his dad used to, unfortunately, his father's now passed away, so we don't know what his dad may or may not have known about what happened on that night. But he used to go out fishing with his father, and his dad would bring up UFOs in this quite a bit with him, asking what he thought about it. And it might be that he was trying to kind of trigger his recollection, maybe suggested that maybe that's what had happened to him, something linking that subject. And he was trying to find out more, trying to get him to recollect what had happened. We don't really know. So how am I telling you this? It's gone from his mind, right? So how does he know? How does this happen? Well, a number of years later, I think it was 1985 or 1986, around that time. So he's now in his sort of late teens, early 20s. He'd gone around a friend's house in Drumry, another area of Glasgow, Vanguard Street. And it was actually another UFO sighting, a later UFO sighting that triggered the recollection of what had happened to him and his brother in 1971. This is really, really incredible. And after that point, that was when he'd written it down in this diary. So he'd gone around there, and they are outside the front, in the front garden, and they're playing frisbee, and they've got a pet dog there. Nice, bright, sunny day. And his friend Mick, Mick's mother and sister are sitting on the front step just watching him play with the dog in the garden. And all of a sudden, Rob thinks that the frisbee's been thrown, and he ducks to avoid it. He comes back up and he realizes it's not the frisbee yet. There's an object in the air. It's hovering a couple of 100 feet up, he estimates, about sort of 500 feet away from them. And it was glowing white. It was a glowing white disc. It had a sort of scorch marks. He's drawn quite a good drawing of this, actually. He did a painting of this. And it had these kind of almost looking like burn marks on the top of the thing. So there's a disc slightly domed on the top with these sort of burn marks around the top part of it. Very strange. And it's very rare you get sort of cases where that particular thing's described. And this thing was just hovering there in the air and moving just slowly off to the southwest of them. And they're looking at this thing and it's completely silent. And they're just mouth agape. He said he estimates it was about sort of 30 foot across. So we're not talking about a sort of small, like balloon-like thing. We're talking about a sort of moderate-sized craft of some kind.
Yeah.
And they're staring at it. And what happens is it kind of moved off out of sight, headed towards the River Clyde. And as it reached the river in the distance, they watched it perform a right-angle turn and then start following the river. So all of a sudden, it's just going off right angles to where it had been before. And it moves off out of sight. As soon as it's out of sight, they run inside the house and run upstairs to the upstairs bedroom window to see if they can still spot the thing. But they can't really see it from their position. So then they go back downstairs and they're outside and they're having a good old chat with the mother and sister about what they've just witnessed. And Rob says his friend Mick was adamant it was like a remote controlled model of some kind, and he was saying that's ridiculous. It was way too big for that, and it was silent. You know, it's obviously something far more unusual. Do
you think, Dave, after some kind of experience like that guy had, that people become marked and that they're more prone to have more experiences throughout their life? Has that shown up in your research?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I will say that the amount of UFO sightings that people who experience contact have is just way above normal. So a lot of the time you get people go through their whole life, like my father desperately wants to see a UFO himself. I turned my father into it from an arch skeptic and an arch believer in the subject, because anybody who looks into this subject with an open and intelligent mind cannot fail to see that there's something going on with it. And,
well, close me down if you want to, but did your dad get to see the UFO?
Not yet, no.
No, not yet. Has your dad? Yeah.
I've had a sighting myself in 2009, which is coincidentally within 2 months of becoming the chairman for Birmingham UFO Group, because Craig and Mark passed on the group to me in 2009. Call it coincidence if you wish, whatever. Anyway, we'll get back to that. I'm talking about the case in Glasgow. So anyway, so he has this sighting, and they go outside and they're having a chat outside about this, about what they've seen. A few minutes go by, and all of a sudden there's this loud roaring sound as two military jets fly at a low altitude right across the top of the house and head off in the direction that the UFO disappeared in. Now, it's Rob's, essentially some kind of military operation and interception, if you will. And we can't prove that happened, because this was obviously many, many years before. I do sometimes reach out to the MOD with these cases, but usually only when you've got an accurate date and time and that sort of thing. You have to be very, very specific with that. You can't just be sort of, at some point this year there was an interception.
Do you know when we did Woolsthorpe? And I'll not cut in too long, because I want to
that's right. You go for it.
But I knew it was September 15th that the incident kicked off. So that was the only reason I got the information back with the freedom of information request. So sorry, Dave, go on.
No, it's absolutely fine now. But you'll know how difficult it is unless you provide very specific details.
Yeah,
it's very easy for them to just come back and say, "Oh, I need more information."
And did I say 2015? I think I did. Yeah. I think I did. That's my mistake. It was September the 15th, 2009. So go on. I've got to get my facts right.
No worries. Yeah. So anyway, there appeared to be some sort of military intercept. Probably there's a number of RAF bases within the sort of 100 miles of Glasgow. So, which obviously is next to no time when you're flying a jet. So maybe we don't really know what happened with that. But what happened was in the days following this incident, Rob said the details of what happened to him and his brother in 1971. It was probably the trigger was probably the glowing white of the craft. It reminded him of the disc that they'd seen previously, and the memories started to come back. Now, I've dealt with lots of cases where that's where people forget things for sometimes years on end, and then there'll be some specific trigger that will trigger them to remember. Even somebody else describing, like from another witness describing it, or sometimes it might be simply a light that they see or some sort of sound that reminds them of some aspect of it. And it's almost like that breaks through the memory block that's been put into place.
You're absolutely spot on. And when you said that these memories or what had happened was kind of falling out of the back of his mind.
Yeah.
As much as he's trying to remember them, and
Yeah.
that when the experience I had, and we'll do it briefly. I think 1997, the most traumatic one. I'd forgot all about it, and it was only when I woke up and sat on edge of bed next morning, and Mary said to me, "You've got 3 holes in your back," and then I remembered. If she'd have never turned around and looked at me that morning, yes, I don't think I would have. I'd have known that I'd woke up with 3 holes in my back. I don't think I'd have remembered. Yes. And it's still all fragmented memories. So where is he today then on all of this then? This guy who's had the experience.
So Robert, I mean, he passed on these details to me. He may or may not have had other incidents since. I mean, I've dealt with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and I obviously always invite them to keep in touch if they have other experiences. It was an ongoing case. Had lots of things happen. We haven't got to the particularly creepy incident, which I'll go over in a minute. Yeah, it can, and that's all documented in the case report. Lots of different sightings over the years. And there was no sign that these sightings had come to a close. But obviously, unless he reaches out to me directly, there's, like I say, hundreds and hundreds of people I've spoken with over the last 16 years. I can't keep on, and I don't want to do that either, because a lot of people, they just want to move on with their life. Some people want to put it behind them, even if they've had incredible experiences that a lot of people are desperate to have. The people who are actually having these experiences, a lot of the time, they genuinely don't want it.
They don't want it, and as a researcher like yourself, Dave, you're actually craving. You know that somebody's got some information, but like you've just said, respectfully, you just can't pressure them for it. No. It's nice when you get it, but before you get to the creepy bit, totally detached from the UFOs. What's in them tanks at back of you?
That is a blue-tongued skink is in the bottom one, and a corn snake in the top one.
And a corn snake, right? Thank you. Right,
my partner's allergic to fur, which might explain the hair. Right?
Oh.
Then again, too bad. No, that's why we got reptiles and stuff. So anyway, back to this case. So I'm going to move forward now till sort of mid-90s. Few years after what had happened with the Vanguard Street incident, and he used to go out fishing on a lake. He'd be out, and he'd go out fishing with his friends on Gare Loch, which is northwest of the small town Rue, in the outskirts of Glasgow. Again, he used to go regularly fishing on this loch with his friends, and then in the evening they would go back to a caravan. Now, on the north side of the loch is a stately home. It's still there today. It's called Blair Vadach, and I think it's been taken over with offices now inside. But back then, they used to rent out parts of the area around it, the acres of land, for people to put their caravans on. And Mick, from the previous sighting, his father owned this caravan, and that's where it was stationed, at the edge of this grassland around Blair Vadach. There's a road that runs, the A814 runs along the north side of the loch. So essentially, they'd gone out and they'd gone fishing all day, and it gets to about sort of 5 in the evening, and there's a light rain starts to start up, so they decide to call it a day, and they're going to go back to the caravan. So they there's actually a boating centre, which is still there between the loch and Blair Vadach, so they could easily set out from there, and then in the evening return to the caravan. So they go back to the caravan, and they're relaxing. Again, they had a couple of drinks. I always have to ask these, where you drugs, drink, etc. Again, I don't think that the alcohol that they consumed played any part in what happened with this. So the three of them are in there just chatting away, just having a nice relaxed evening in the caravan. The main curtain at the end, the main window of the caravan, the curtains weren't drawn, and the side window facing the road, the curtain wasn't drawn. The other one on the far side was drawn, the other side window at that point. It gets to about 11:30, and all of a sudden, I think it was Mick or maybe his brother Raymond, they notice that there's somebody coming along the path alongside the road, or in between where they are in the caravan and the road is just a hedge, and there was a bit of a drop. So the road's lower down to where they were seated in the caravan. But they can see the torso of this person coming along the path alongside the road. Now, the problem with this is, as I said, the road's much lower down, So
right.
for them to have been able to see the top half of this person, they would have had to have been about 12 foot high, right? Which didn't make logical sense. So again, anecdotal details, really, really good anecdotal details from Rob in this. He said to me, he said, straight away in my mind, I thought it's got to be a car that's driven up onto the pavement. Somebody's leaning out the sunroof, and they're up high because they're leaning out the sunroof. Immediately, he's trying to come up with logical reasons for why this figure's so high up, and it's moving very, very smoothly, moving their direction, and it keeps coming along the road, and they all three of them are looking out the window at this figure coming along. And they can't see any lights down behind the hedge, so maybe it's a car with the headlights off, right? But it's very smooth, and it doesn't appear to be what it's kind of more like gliding. And as it gets nearer, all of a sudden, it hits him. It's the same being that him and his brother saw back in 1971.
Wow!
Wearing the same stuff, wearing the same black shawl, but this time Mick and Mick's brother, who'd not been involved in Raymond, had not been involved in any UFO case. Mick had obviously been there for what happened on Vanguard Street with the white glowing craft, but he'd not been there present in 1971.
Knew the detail,
yeah. So he told them, and he's like, "It's the being, it's the thing that we saw." Now they could see its face, but at a distance, it just looked like what they describe as dark holes, like holes in its face, or essentially describing large black eyes, grey essentially. But they described it as kind of skeletal because it was pale and it was bold, and it had these sort of dark sunken holes, right, as he describes it. This thing moves along, and it's coming along, and it appears to be floating off the ground. They can't see it, but they can see the top half of it, and it's moving very, very slowly and kind of moving forward. And they lose sight of it from the main window, and then they move across the side window to keep looking at this thing. It's moving along like this, and it's not looking at them. It's just going straight forward. But as it comes past, it's now within about 10 feet of them. And as it comes past, all of a sudden, it turns its head slowly and looks directly at them while continuing to move. So it kind of moves sideways, and it just keeps going out of sight, He said it was spooky as anything. So it seemed to be aware of their presence. And they were like, what's going to happen next? And they were a bit scared that it was going to come into they didn't know what was going to happen because they're out there alone in this caravan,
Well, what do you think then, Dave, is the message for that? You know, the gap in between the experience. What is the message? I don't expect you to have an answer for that. That's what's kind of going through my head.
I wish I did. I wish I did. It's not, but it gets worse. It gets worse.
All right.
So... A few seconds. No. So the being moves out of sight, and they lose sight of it. Right. Within a few seconds later, all of a sudden, there's these loud thudding sounds and what sounds like screaming type noises. They're coming from outside of the caravan, and he said the thuds were almost making the caravan shake. It was something going on, and they figured that the noises were coming from behind the other side window, away from where the road was, the one with the curtains drawn.
Yeah,
and as they get closer to it, it's louder, and they know what's going on. They're all really frightened. They don't want to see what's there, of course, after what's just happened with the being going past. But in the end, Raymond moves in closer, and he pulls back the curtains, and what he sees is a sheep's face pushed up against the glass. It appears to be off the ground, so it's essentially a sheep being lifted up in the midair, being shoved into the outside of the glass of the window. He said the screams were the noise of the sheep panicking, and the thuds were its legs hitting the outside of the caravan. In shock, Raymond jumps back, obviously extremely frightened by this. Curtain closes, dead silent. Bang, goes. Nothing. No screams, no thuds, nothing. It's just dead silent. Mick gets extremely... They're all frightened by this, but Mick particularly horrified by what's just happened, and he kind of goes into panic mode. Rob said he was shifting around through stuff, and he got some of that the blue safety rope that you get sometimes packed away in caravans. He got that out and then proceeded to spider web up all the door handles and all the window handles all around the van, just tearing it out and just rolling it around just to block anything from getting into the van. Horrified. And then once he'd finally done that, he went and sat down cross-legged underneath the end table in the van and refused to speak with all the other two. Obviously, they were all pretty traumatized by what was going on. They remained there the rest of the night, to Rob's knowledge. No missing time, no other signs of contact or being taken or anything like that. It was just silent. About 6:30 in the morning, early morning light comes up, and they decide they're going to get out of there because nobody's going to come and pick them up. Yeah, they have to get out of there at some point, and they decide as soon as it's light that they're going to be brave enough to leave the van. So they step outside. There was no sign of any sheep alive or dead outside the van. There was Rob said there was a kind of side field alongside where the caravan was that had sheep in, so it's likely that the sheep had kind of come through the hedge and sneaked into their field, but obviously that doesn't explain why it was up in midair and being pushed.
Do you know, before you started that last bit of this account, if you would have said, can anybody guess, it's like one of the things, what's going to happen after the break? I don't think anybody would have predicted the sheep being pressed up against the glass.
Totally haunting.
And obviously, absolutely terrifying. And obviously, they were traumatized. I would have thought the sheep were most traumatized thing there.
Yeah.
I mean, but absolutely. Do you know that's frightening, isn't it? Absolutely, and just shows how
the situation. Yeah. I mean, I think that probably, given my views on what happened with the sheep, I think it was probably accidental. I think it was likely there was a craft over the top of the caravan and had some kind of field around it, anti-grav, whatever you like, and this sheep was inadvertently being picked up in this field in the midair. Right. I don't think, I mean, you could view that it was being done on purpose to scare them, but I haven't dealt with many cases where that really happens. Like I say, the screen memory phenomena, I think, is done to reduce the fear of situations, not increase it. So
absolutely great case. I'm sure people, well, I know there'll be some questions and we'll go to them in a few minutes. We'll get Les on and he'll tell us his views because he's been listening to this all the way through. I know he has. And do you think then, just jumping away from that slightly, do you think we can evoke the phenomena? Do you think we can talk about CE5? Talk about using a can we evoke the phenomena? We'll encompass it all.
I'd certainly believe there's good evidence on record that you can, especially with ghostly type phenomena. CE5 thing is an interesting one. I've dealt with lots of people who've. I sat in on a CE5 and nothing happened when we did it, but it was interesting taking part in it. I'd never say never with it. I've dealt with quite a few experiences where people have experienced contact while in a meditative state, so they've been meditating and have met a being. And who am I to say that that's any less real? Yeah. Because the being might be appearing into metaphysically. It's a very complicated subject, and one thing I've learned is not to dismiss anything at face value, even if it's something that I personally haven't experienced.
That's what I'm enjoying about talking to you, Dave. Honestly, it's absolutely brilliant. And let's pull Les in and see whether we've got some questions. Are you okay with that?
Sure thing. Hey, Les.
Yeah. Have a sip of your drink, Dave. And is it the hard stuff you're on tonight?
Absolutely, 100% vodka. Water.
Yeah, no, as usual, Paul, Dave, we've got some great questions in tonight. And I'll start off with Ginge 197. I'll put that one on the screen. You might be able to see it yourself, Dave. I'll read it out. Dave, which case has stuck with you all these years that you cannot get your head around?
Can I just put in just for 1 second before going into detail on it? If Ginger's come up with a case that you want to go into detail, we'll do that one after. So just touch on the questions from Les briefly. Otherwise, you'll get caned for not asking the questions. Not from me, from the audience.
Of course, yeah. I mean, obviously, any of these questions talking about cases can quickly spiral out into a massive deep chat. Yeah, there's a very interesting case from Droitwich, which I've talked about quite a lot of times before. It involves a video footage where it was a couple of abduction experiences that had happened in late 2010, and in the space of a week, with a lady being taken twice in within about 6 days of the two experiences. And between the two, they'd actually set up a video camera in the room. Her husband actually put together cameras for a living. They had loads when I went around to see the family, so there wasn't anything suspicious with that. And he wanted to kind of calm her nerves down. So he said, we'll set up this camera, and if it happened, nothing will come and get you if there's a camera watching you at night. And that did actually help. It did actually. She said that she could settle down, but a couple of days after the camera's set up, she has another experience, a second abduction, if you will. Lots of very, very interesting elements to it, including screen memories. After it, of course, they go check the footage. They're like, okay, yeah, things happen that you remember from the night. What are you going to do? Camera's been rolling through the night. You go and check it out, don't you? At about 3:33 in the morning, there's a period of about 14 minutes where the lady essentially looks like she's dematerialized from under the covers of the bed on camera. And there's I'm not saying it definitely does show that. There's some interesting views that it could be some sort of weird optical illusion, but I will say that American TV show Fact or Fate, she actually sent the video to them because she was interested in hearing different experts' opinions on what the video did or didn't show. She wasn't in it for the money or anything like that. Yeah. She sent it to, she was actually quite traumatized by the fact that something had happened, by the fact that when they looked on the camera, there was something actually there because it kind of validated that something had taken place, and she didn't want this at all. She really genuinely didn't. But they apparently couldn't recreate the footage convincingly without the use of special effects, and I can tell you categorically that the witnesses are extremely trustworthy, and I don't believe that they were fabricating in any way. So that video is fascinating because it's one of the few times where a contact case I've dealt with has got like video evidence seemingly supporting it. This is a huge case. A lot of people with that case, a lot of people kind of try to sensationalize the video aspect of it. The video aspect of it is a small part of one of many experiences that have gone on throughout her life, exactly like Rob with the Glasgow case.
Yeah,
and that's a Tom Waters question. We were going to ask you that, so well, that's great. Yeah.
And yeah, we can talk as much as you like about the video or about the experiences around it, whatever you want. It's fun.
No,
is this video accessible by anybody online? Is it anywhere? Is it posted? No.
Okay, so it's the two places you can see it online. So first of all, the best place that I can recommend seeing it is the Birmingham UFO Group case report on the case. And you can get to that from the Birmingham UFO Group website. If you just go to case investigations, type in into the search, type in Droitwich contact case. There's actually more than one contact case from the Droitwich area. So there's two cases called Droitwich contact case, but it's the one with the video footage mentioned in the title. So there's a link to the footage inside that. The best place for it is that because it's got my detailed step-by-step analysis, loads of screen grabs, and I don't ever try to push a particular view. I just go with what it shows. I talk about the pros of the video and the cons, and you can make up your own mind. The other place to see it is inside the Birmingham UFO Group YouTube channel. So you can just search for Birmingham UFO, because all the videos inside the reports are also in that YouTube channel. So you can find it directly on YouTube as well that way. And you'll see the interesting comments. A lot of people sort of saying, oh, it's camera trickery, coming up with all sorts of wild theories, because you would, right? Because straight away, there's this kind of skeptical thing. And this is the problem, is that there's so much skepticism today, and there's so much fake videos out there all the time, and the video isn't particularly that impressive. So it looks like something that could quite easily be faked. And the reason I know it's not faked is that I've dealt in depth with the witnesses over a long period of time. But it's very hard for me to get that across because nobody else can experience that. They'll view the witnesses with people who would potentially make up a fabricated hoax for money or whatever, which goes on again and again.
Okay, I've got a question from Mark Anderson. Dave, are you using a relational database?
Not at the moment. So at the moment, I'm building it in Excel. The reason I'm doing that is not only am I very familiar with Excel with filters and formulas and that sort of thing and charts built off the front of that, but because it's free of charge. So a lot of these relational databases, as Mark described, is essentially it would be something you'd have to pay for on a monthly basis. I already do that with the Birmingham UFO Group website. So there's already expenses, and we don't. Birmingham UFO Group, we don't kind of try to earn any money off what we're doing with the group. So it's just kind of, we're already paying for that. I don't want to have to start paying for database space on top of that. But if anybody does know a decent sized database that's free and will genuinely allow me to put in thousands of rows of data, I'm talking about like a large amount of data, and run stats off it, like graphs and that sort of thing, that isn't Excel, I'm all ears. I'd love to check that out.
Cool.
Okay, and when he's asking, anyone ever wasted your effort and time, Dave?
Yes. So there's been numerous cases over the years where alarm bells have rang for me. Some of those cases, there's been sort of a lot of witnesses, and you find that you can only talk to the one person, so it's all their individual testimony. And when you start asking, can I speak to this person, there's different excuses. Now, I'm not saying that some of these cases were already investigated, like the case with Rob. I want to talk with other people with that, and I haven't yet. But there's aspects of that case that brought home the reality of it, like, for example, the fact they documented it all in this diary and that sort of thing. But yeah, with other cases, I've genuinely felt that the person's trying to get out there as much as possible and spread their own name around, and be sure to send it to all the newspapers and all that sort of thing. And straight away you're kind of like, yeah, you're in this for personal fame and fortune, not just to get the details out there. And I've actually written quite extensive reports, like pages and pages of reports, and then at the last minute changed my mind, or the witnesses changed their mind and said, I don't want you to release this, I'm not happy with this anymore. And I've had to kind of bow down and say, okay. I don't like it when that happens, but it does from time to time.
For the genuine ones, you do it, you don't like it, but when you realise that you've been had over, like it's so annoying, and that's happened to me a few times.
It's a lot less than people give it credit for. Like, a lot of skeptics will say that these hoaxes and things are everywhere, and everybody's trying to hoax these stories. It's not that. It's genuinely not that at all. I've dealt with like hundreds and hundreds of cases, and I can honestly say that in over 95% of those cases, maybe even 99% of those cases, the individuals believe themselves to have seen something. Yeah. Now, a lot of the time, it might be misidentification of something mundane, like as we were talking about sky lanterns earlier on, and that's absolutely fine. But to them, they've had a genuine experience that they're trying to get across to me. It's very, very, because a lot of the time, the individual has to spend quite a number of hours with me talking about this stuff. Why are they going to waste all that time? What do they get back from it? A lot of the times, their name and details are left out of the reports at their request. So they don't even want their personal details in there. So what's that telling you? There's no fame or fortune there if you don't even know who it is. But they're happy to talk to me because they want to get the information out there, or to find out whether there are other witnesses. There's a number of times in the past where I've released a case report and other witnesses have come out of the woodwork because of that case report. Yeah. And that's brilliant when that happens. It doesn't happen that often, but the case reports they're linked to Google, because I use a Wix website, so it's linked into Google, so people can search for cases, and sometimes they'll come up in the Google search. So they've found out that somebody else has had the same sighting, and they've got in touch. It's absolutely brilliant when that happens. Yeah,
just a question from me then, Dave. You mentioned earlier on the newspapers, etc. So my question is, in the media in general, I guess it's quite as simple as this: are the media there to ridicule the subject, or do you think the media actually enlightens people and makes people more aware?
Yeah, both depending on which media you're talking about. So I'm actively suspicious of TV programs that go out on BBC, etc. I get invited onto them quite a lot, but a lot of the time I turn them down because I've seen numerous UFO documentaries over the years where they kind of push the ridicule, all the sensationalism angles too much, and I've backed off from that. At the same time, I've spoken on radio quite a lot and that sort of thing. Obviously, as long as I'm able to talk freely on the program, I'm a lot more happy with that. I think that the times are changing. The times they are changing. So since 2017, with the Pentagon emissions, things have been a bit more open with the subject, and media have been a bit more serious towards it. There's definitely some news outlets who regularly support the subject from a serious perspective and are not trying to ridicule it. Are trying to put out the information that becomes available to them. Obviously, behind the scenes, they're probably under some kind of control about exactly what goes out. And there's certain big cases on record where they'll never talk about it. There's certain aspects of the phenomena that are very, very rarely talked about as well.
But you see, Dave, don't you? You see, without naming anybody, but you see some researchers who are just happy to just get in onto the tabloid newspapers about anything.
Yes.
And I've never seen you do that, to be honest with you. And I don't know loads about you, but I've not seen you there. And that speaks volumes, doesn't it? But like you said, you've been asked to speak BBC, all sorts.
Yeah, for me, it's never been about the fame and fortune. And the day it is just, seriously, I don't want that.
You'll have done it. And I see Steve Meara's in. Steve will have done it. We've turned down loads and loads. You've done it simply because you know which direction it's going to go.
Yes,
and
exactly. It'll usually be they'll go through the details in all seriousness, but then there'll be these little kind of nudges, little slight. He's a bit nuts, isn't he? This one.
That's what it's, ultimately that's the direction they want to take it. They want to take it. I wouldn't say with the narrative that they want to play, but it's the narrative at the moment. Public thinking, but there is a change. I think there is a change. So let's Paul, do not put a downer on it all. There is a
Oh
change.
yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think in recent years the subject's got more open to talk about, and more people are talking. Some people view that means that there's more sightings on the rise. I don't believe that for a second. Yeah, I think that there's always been sightings. I don't think there's any definite patterns. I think people are becoming more open to talk about it, which makes it look.
Les is itching to ask another question.
And that sort of like eases us straight into Dragonborn's question. Dave, to me, this is a serious subject, but do you get people laughing at your interest and tell you it's all stuff and nonsense?
Absolutely, yeah. But those individuals are usually people who haven't gone into depth with the subject and actually looked at the facts of the cases that are on record. And it's very, very easy to dismiss because it sounds wild, eh? Yeah. Even the idea of these intelligent beings just being out there flying around in their craft, yeah. If it was just that sounds really, really wild, doesn't it? It sounds like sci-fi, yeah. But then you get into the contact thing where people are having direct experiences with these beings, where you've got the hybrid program where they're mixing DNA and making these hybrid babies and things like this. There's all sorts of elements to it that sound so wild that they couldn't possibly be occurring. But when you've dealt with the subject for so many years, as I have, it hasn't pushed me into kind of skeptical territories. It's the other way around. Yeah, it's strengthened my views that there's a reality to this that's going on. And when you see how these experiences affect people's lives, I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on this aspect of stuff because it'll make the talk too dark. But I've dealt with people who've been in very, very bad states because of their experiences. You know, long-term anxiety and panic attacks. I've dealt with cases where it's broken apart relationships and things like that. You know, that brings home the reality of what we're dealing with. It's far away from kind of little fun and frolics and making up a little bit of a hoax as you can possibly get. And you see that firsthand.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. And Terry Donnelly is asking, has Dave explored any best practices / techniques to try and attract the phenomenon, such as using specific sound frequencies, for example?
So we mentioned the CE5 thing earlier on. I took part on one of the Skywatches, a group there wanted to do a CE5. I was intrigued to see whether anything would happen, and nothing did on that occasion. I'm not going to say that nothing ever happens with that. Maybe it does in some cases. I think a lot of the time with the subject, you just need to be in the right place at the right time. It's entirely possible that the beings are aware of different individuals and their viewpoints towards the subject. I've certainly spoken with a number of researchers over the years who've had experiences, but usually you find it's the experiences that have made them a researcher, not the other way around. So and that's what's been their driving force to get actively involved in this subject. So there's all sorts of theories about different ways you can call in UFOs and that sort of thing. But a lot of the time, I just think you need to be in the right place at the right time, or some people would say the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on what
right place, wrong time. Yeah, spot on.
All right. Probably we don't need to go down a rabbit hole with this one, but it's from David Barker. Do you think all the recent disclosure is a smokescreen?
Absolutely not. I think that they're talking about at a high level real experiences that are taking place. If you're talking specifically around what's going on in the States with the Pentagon emissions, which I assume you are, because there's very little from the UK side. MOD are very, very close-lipped about everything that's come out since 2017. Now, logically, it's going on across here in the same way as it is in the States. This is a global phenomena, so why would it be occurring across there, not across here? But they don't really say that much. In the States, I believe that what they are doing is essentially keeping the public happy by releasing little tidbits of information. They're essentially, and the problem is also that the military complex in America is so compartmentalized that a lot of the people talking, it's genuine that they don't know what they are because they're not privy to that information, because there's select groups in the depths of the Pentagon, MI6, whatever, that are aware of a lot more about the subject. But because it's so compartmentalized, a lot of the Pentagon staff, etc., a lot of the US military, that is all that they know, that they're seeing these objects that are moving around, performing intelligent maneuvers, vastly outmaneuvering their aircraft. They've gone on the record to say that, and when they say they don't know, in a lot of cases, they're being absolutely correct about that. They personally do not know. But that doesn't mean that the entire military complex doesn't know.
But is it a smoke screen? I don't know whether Dave Barker means meaning that we're just being given these little tidbits to kick that ball further down the road to just keep us tied up in knots for another 5 to 10 years. That's where I am with it.
Yeah, I don't believe that big disclosure is coming anytime soon, because there's aspects to this subject that they will not willingly admit to the general public, because we're not just talking about them buzzing military jets and having a quick look at military bases. We're talking about the contact phenomena. We're talking about people being taken out of their own houses, out of their own vehicles, swallow out walking, etc. Then a lot of people would not be able to handle that, genuinely would not be able to handle the reality of that if they were told that was going on. They would say, okay, stop them, and they'd have to say, we can't. They're just going about doing this, and we're powerless.
Which shows their inadequacies, doesn't it?
Yes. I also think that they are going to keep a lid on things because they're trying to militarize. Let's say they've got a downed craft or whatever. They're going to try to militarize that. They're going to try to break it down, find out how it works, and use it to their own particular advantages. They're not going to want to share that information or that technology with the wider public. And if it's coming from outside, then they're not technically the owners of it, are they? It's kind of owned by humanity.
Do you think that could be the reason why we've not had that actual contact? Because any civilization or intelligence outside of Earth or outside of humanity actually knows that us humans as a species are just absolutely vile, to be honest with you, aren't we?
Yeah.
And look at what we're doing to each other.
Yes.
So
I think it's an ongoing project, and I think what we see through contact is aspects of that. I think it's something that's been going on for hundreds of years and has no sign of coming to any closure. And for that reason, they don't want to kind of openly display themselves to the planet. There's these very interesting incidents, like, of course, the infamous Phoenix Lights incident, where a large craft flew over a number of American states in full view, hundreds of people. Yeah, and it's very, very strange that happens. Usually, cases occur in very rural locations or in the middle of the night when there's hardly anybody around. I think that's not a coincidence. I think it's done on purpose. And I think if they happen to be spotted by somebody, they're probably aware that some people might believe that, some people are fence-sitters, some people don't believe it, whatever. So they can go about doing what they're doing. But I believe that's the reason why they haven't kind of shown themselves to the planet yet and landed everywhere, because they've got no intention of. And I think that the missing time and the screen memories, etc., that comes out of contact cases, I think that's part of that. It shows that it's covert. There's a covert nature to what's going on with this. Yeah. So, yeah.
Go on, Les. It's
just a quick question from me then. Probably just warrants a one-line answer. How far in years advanced are the military tech?
What, in your opinion, Les?
Where we are now?
About 40.
Really? 40 years?
What you mean? Are you talking? Sorry, I think I misunderstood the question. Them against us? You're talking about the beings, the craft.
The tech what's available to us now, here and present, with an iPhone 16 or whatever.
Yeah.
How far are the military advanced with their tech in years? Do you think?
Oh, you mean behind the scenes? I think that there's black budget things going on decades before they're shown to the public, as we've seen happen with the stealth bomber.
So what are you saying then, Les? Are you saying that, or surmising that some of the stuff that people are seeing could be military tech? Yeah,
I agree. Some of it could be. I would never put out the question that some of the sightings that are being seen are test flights of black budget craft. What I can put out the question is that it explains the subject. Okay, case in point, right? A case from earlier this year in April, I investigated a flying triangle case from literally within about 10 minutes from where I live. It was great that it was so close because I could just drive straight around there and talk with the witness, and he pointed out where it happened. But essentially, you saw a black triangular shaped craft with an orange light at each corner, and it flew around. It kind of flew up in an arc into the sky and then seemed to vanish. Perhaps it zipped off. He didn't see it go. It just went. Now, we checked on flight radar and there was nothing come up on flight radar, so in the vicinity. But you could say, okay, it didn't have its transponder on, right? Well, the trouble with that is we're in the vicinity of Birmingham International Airport, and aircraft are advised to have their transponders on in close proximity to the airport. You could say, okay, it's still some sort of military craft, right? And they're outside of the realms of having to have a transponder on, so that's why it hasn't showed up yet. The issue with that, why on earth would the military be flying a top secret project right over Birmingham in full sight of everybody.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Testing out in the middle of the desert, like the good old famous Area 51 out in Nevada, that makes sense, yeah? It's out in the middle of nowhere, and they're flying these things around in the desert hardly anybody's going to see. I've dealt with cases from all over the place, and many of them are from very urbanized areas, from the middles of towns where these things have not just flown across, but have literally landed in front of people and things.
Well,
so it doesn't make any sense.
Wasn't there a similar case like that from Denver Airport where there was a UFO flying around, wasn't there, a few years ago?
There was, yeah. The one that shot up and left the hole in the cloud.
The hole in the cloud, yeah.
Really interesting case, that one.
Yeah.
Just before we go to another question, Les, thanks, Alison, for doing the moderating and joining us again every week. And Lee, we've got my daughter Laura. That what main reason for butting in. I would say Laura because I know you. Hi, Laura, and Steve O'Neill, John Paul Body, Dazza G, and Deb Shaw, and just Louise Bowery. Catkins. I've said that about 3 times. I shouldn't. That's too catchy, that one. Stop saying it. Go on, Les, with more questions.
While we're paused at this juncture, then we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping in Paul. So just tell us about your website and merchandise for sale, and we'll do the same with
and we'll do the same for Dave. So anybody wants the Truth Proof books, truthproof.uk. You can also access the stratification tool that me and Martin Abbas have developed for your own sightings and fill that information form in, and it's all anonymous. We just want to see if there's patterns forming. If you want to purchase the Wolflands DVD, that's also available through truthproof.uk or on eBay or what's the other alternative? There is another one, but it's slipped my mind.
Amazon Prime download. Yeah.
Amazon Prime download. And if you want the Kindle books, obviously they're on Amazon as well, the Truth Proof books, if you want the electronic versions. And that's about all we can do for you. And Dave, just tell us where people can find you, every bit of information about you, because that website, when I started looking on it, the amount of detail you put into it, absolutely commendable.
So the main website is BUFOG, BUFOG.com. On there, you'll find literally hundreds and hundreds of case reports written by myself and the other 2 investigators of Birmingham UFO Group. And then you can freely search for different cases, look at particular dates, places, etc., see what comes up. Also on there, loads of other wealth of information on the UFO subject. There's a section on identified flying objects. There's a section with like famous UFO quotes. There's even a section containing what I believe to be the biggest online source of UFO-themed music videos, believe it or not. Literally hundreds, split into various genres of music. So go check it out. Whatever your type of music, you'll find some tracks.
Check that one out, Dave. Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff on there. We've got our Facebook community page. It's called BUFOG Truth Seekers. That's a private group that I admin. There's about 2,000 people in it at the moment, I believe. You're more than welcome to join that group and ask questions, post links to interesting stuff in there. It's because it's a private group, I don't stand for any nonsense. So there's no Mickey taken or anything like that. And I consider it a safe space to talk about not only UFOs, but also paranormal conspiracies, whatever you like, interesting stuff in there. There's also a normal organization page for Birmingham UFO Group where I'll post details of our upcoming meetings, and also when new case reports are released, they'll go on there. But the main place where we chat is is BUFOG Truth Seekers. On the website, there's also a section on UFO Wave, which Paul mentioned towards the start of
the board game.
It's a card game that I developed from scratch, So as well as a UFO investigator, I'm an avid tabletop gamer, and my some would say my midlife crisis was to develop my own card game and put it out there commercially, and I did just that. I've actually got a copy of it. Right there it is. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that.
No, we can see it. That's
UFO Wave, So the cartoon artwork, you can see different craft types and being types on the front there. The artwork has actually been done by an experiencer from New York who's had actual contact experiences. I reached out to him because I liked his quirky art style and I wanted to take it down a kind of fun, family-friendly route. But it's absolutely loaded with aspects of the real subject in it. It's without a doubt, I believe, the most authentic portrayal of the genuine UFO subject that's ever been seen in the world of tabletop gaming. There's a section on the BUFOG website about that. It was on Amazon for a while, but we had to pull it from that because Amazon, they don't like sole traders. They only support kind of large-scale companies, and the prices were just going off the scale
That's
with it.
why my paperback books aren't on there at the moment.
Yeah, it is difficult, isn't it? But I'll happily send out copies through the post privately. So yeah, go and check out the game on there. There's a wonderful animated advert which we had made with the background story and all sorts of stuff. So I'm quite proud of that.
Just in time for Christmas, folks. Get your own.
Nice one.
Yeah, do go check it out. Then there's ICER. So a bit more about ICER is ICER.network. That's the website for ICER, the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research. What that is essentially an international company. There's about 30 countries around the globe involved, each with their own representative and deputy. I'm the UK deputy within that. It's essentially to push the reality of the subject to the wider public however we can. We've developed educational courses, and there's all sorts of information on the website and other things.
Is that what you're involved in with Gary Hesseltine?
That's correct, yes. So Gary's the UK representative and also the vice president of ICER.
Okay.
But yeah, it's countries all around the globe involved in that. A mix of researchers like myself and academics and astrologists, all sorts of astronomers, all sorts of individuals in there with all sorts of different viewpoints on the subject.
Fabulous. Good. Thank you.
Do you want another question, guys?
Les, if you've got some questions, are you happy to take a few more questions, Dave?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, or I can go into another case. We can delve into another case.
Few questions.
We'll probably do a couple more questions.
Sure, no worries.
Another case, yeah.
Evo 71. Did Dave ever reach a conclusion on the case caught on camera where the lady disappeared from her bed?
Describe it. Do you mean the case as a whole, or do you mean the video footage? It's a very difficult thing.
I suppose as a whole. I don't want to speak for Steve.
Okay, I'll tell you both. Actually, I'll tell you both, Steve. So first of all, the case as a whole, I genuinely believe that the lady is a repeat experiencer, absolutely categorically. So she'd had experiences going right back to childhood, strange enough involving her brother, just like the case we described in Glasgow. But she had memories of that. She'd seen various beings over the years, greys, even mantid beings, all sorts of stuff. Really, really interesting case. She'd had psychic type phenomena as a child, loads of elements of what she was telling me fitted in. And this lady had no real interest in the UFO subject. She didn't know what to tell me or not to tell me. And the stuff that she was coming out with, I was like, yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. The two experiences she had, the video is linked with the second of those experiences, I genuinely believe were real abduction cases. They had elements of missing time, of screen memories. The first incident started with a UFO sighting and an altered frame of mind where she was acting really complacent towards what was taking place. There was loads there that again was hitting as genuine experiences for me. With the second experience, which happened when the video footage was taken, she actually had this kind of body scan off this being, which she described as a small doctor chap in a white doctor's coat, spectacles, and a brushed back red hair. No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was we think it was a grey. She never got to see it in its true form, but the memory block that was in place with that, the screen memory block, under hypnosis, she was actually regressed. Now, I know that that's a very controversial element of the subject because of false memory syndrome and that sort of thing. However, the lady could remember about 95% of what she described under hypnosis. So a lot of the details were already consciously recollected before that. But under hypnosis, the regression hypnotherapist took her back to that incident and asked her to describe this being. And when he asked her to describe the face of the being, she said, it looks like a mask. It looks like a mask that wants to fall off. It was like her mind was seeing that this vision of this doctor wasn't the true face of this being. And she described this thing as looking human at first, but then they were too long and too thin. You could see that her mind was trying to break past that screen memory. And it performed this body scan where it moved its hands over her and was telling her her ailments telepathically to her. It was a really fascinating incident. After that, so that's when the video took place. Now, it seemed to be a physical abduction, because why would it do a body scan if she wasn't physically there? Yeah, it was moving its hands over her. So there was physical elements to it that led me to believe that she'd actually been taken away from the bedroom during that time. And on that night, she's got this footage where for 14 minutes, the bed goes really, really flat. Now, also the length of time that she was gone for from the bed seems to kind of marry up with about the length of time of the experience. It wasn't like something that happened for a minute. It wasn't like she'd been there for hours and remembered walking all around the craft or anything like that. It seemed to fit with the amount of time. So the video and her recollection of it seemed to match up. So looking at that, because I believe it's a genuine abduction, a physical abduction, I believe that the video footage is probably real and actually shows her being taken on camera. But obviously there's some people will see it and will say it's an optical illusion or a fake or whatever, and that's absolutely fine, because with all aspects of this subject, we're always open to interpretation.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Jane Louise, Dave, we are in Worcestershire, not too far from Kite Chase. Have there been UFO or high strangeness incidents? Where would it be worth visiting?
That's difficult. Specific literally, I remember doing a case, adding a case about Worcestershire to the database earlier today, but I can't remember you have to understand, I'm going through case after case after case after case. It just all merges into one when you look back at it all. There's definitely some cases in there from Worcestershire, so reach out to me via email, via the website, or just give me a call or whatever, phone, contact me on Facebook, however you like, get in touch, and I'll send you links to all the Worcestershire cases that we've looked into. And you can see some synergy on that on the map, but I won't be releasing the interactive map until the database launches, because I'm mapping all the locations, so you'll be able to see patterns in it and that sort of thing, but that's not out yet. So
yeah, well, okay. I'm sure she will, because Jane and her brother and George, her husband, they've been up to Bempton and
yes,
fascinated by area and just fascinated by unexplained. Thanks, Jane. Lovely to hear from you tonight in here.
All right,
Jane, I'll let you know.
The last question for this session, because I know you want to get another story in.
Sure. Yeah.
And Dave, and the question from Mark Anderson, Dave, have you found that people sometimes need emotional support? How 100%. Do you feel as a community we can help them?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely, especially involving contacts, because it's one thing seeing a craft or object up in the sky that usually doesn't leave lasting trauma. Having direct experiences with these beings that a lot of the time don't talk or very, very cryptic, it can be very, very frightening. I believe a lot of that is unintentional. I don't believe that they're scaring people on purpose. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what goes on, and it's very, very covert, as we've already talked about. How do we feel as a community? We can help them. I just think just a general understanding that this subject isn't a laughing matter, and just looking into contact more and not just brushing it away. So there's some researchers out there who specifically separate UFOs from contact, and they consider them as two separate things. And that's because they want the whole subject to be all nuts and bolts and all very, you can capture it on radar and this sort of thing. And contact is all these esoteric, deep elements to it that they don't like. The two are inherently linked, and should never be separated. I've dealt with case after case of contact where the individual has seen a UFO and it leads to a contact experience, or they are literally taken and lifted up into a waiting craft. So they're quite obviously linked. Then you've got the similarities between the beings that are described in contact experiences and those that are described in kind of ground cases where they've seen beings in a window, or other crash cases on record like the infamous Roswell incident. So you've got all these similarities and linking the two subjects. So I think it's a valid part of the subject, and we need to kind of just understand, look into contact, and just be there for people and not treat them like nutters and just not brush it away as a mental illness or anything. I've dealt with quite a lot of cases where people have actually genuinely felt that they were going mad because their experiences are so wild and nobody believes them. And they've actually gone to their GP, and their GP has proved that their mental health is absolutely fine. I'm not saying there's not cases on record where mental health is the reason, and you have to be realistic with this, but there's a lot of cases where it isn't.
Okay, right, guys, I'll see you shortly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Les. And thanks for going through all them, just hitting them questions head on, Mark. That was really good. So what direction do you want to take it, Mark?
Yeah, sure.
Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I think because we've probably only got, because as I say, these cases I picked out are quite detailed ones. I think what I want to do is I'll take you through a UFO crash case from abroad that's
okay. And if we can, I don't know if you've got a clock in front of you, but let's try and leave 8 to 10 minutes, and we'll just hit Leslie a few more questions.
No problem. Absolutely. So the reason why I think this case is important is, one, I believe it's genuine. I think it's an actual crash of a UFO, and obviously the crashes don't occur every day. There's been quite a lot of crashes reported over the decades of UFOs, but this one you won't have heard of unless you follow Birmingham UFO Group and have read the report in depth. This is not going out anywhere else. The individual got in touch with me a number of years ago now, I believe 3 or 4 years ago. The case is in Venezuela, but it involves a gentleman who used to live in the UK, a farmer from Devon. Back in the 1970s, there was a bit of a crash in the world of farming, and they were finding it hard to get profits in. And he came across an advert in the farming magazine, which he got regularly, asking for somebody to move across and live in Venezuela and run a cattle ranch out in the jungles of Venezuela. So Venezuela's got lots of kind of large areas of open grassland, which cattle graze on, and then also dense undergrowth, proper jungle. We're talking about panthers, pythons, the works. Yeah. And he decided he didn't have that many ties going on at the time in his life, and he decided to take them up on it. And he moved across to Venezuela. How do I know this? He sent me full detailed background, so I knew straight away he was exactly who he said he was. He sent me his ID badge. He sent me photographs from when he'd gone across to the ranch and everything. So we're not talking about a fabricated story. No. He did this. So we moved forward to 1996. So been out there 20 years, living in Venezuela, running quite a large cattle ranch out there. And it was in the area of Corralito, which is about central of Venezuela. And by that time, he'd moved up the ranks and was essentially the main admin of this ranch, the main handler of the ranch. Now, the incident I'm going to talk about, it happened over the Christmas holidays, we think on the 27th of December in 1996. So a lot of the staff from the ranch had gone home to see their families and that over Christmas. And left on the ranch were himself, his two stepbrothers, and then a number of other cowboys to manage the animals on the ranch over the Christmas period. Now, we went into all of this in quite a lot of depth. Essentially, the ranch is quite a number of acres of land. There's maps inside the report. You can see the boundaries of it, etc. And it's quite a dangerous area. He said to work in. He said they get kidnappings and that sort of thing, drug cartels, that sort of stuff going across there. So it's very important to lock down the ranch each night. Now, he's no longer running the ranch. He's moved back to the UK now, but he was talking about an incident that happened in the 90s when he was across there. So each evening, what he would do is he would drive a pickup truck out to the outer edge of the ranch, meet the gate guard there for a while, get it all locked down, and then return to the HQ in the centre of the ranch. Now, the route to this was quite an extensive time. It took about half an hour to do the drive from where the HQ was to the outer gate. And on going through that route, they would go past the airstrip. They had a small airstrip where planes would just come in with supplies from time to time. But it's winter time. There's no planes or helicopters or anything like that happening because it's the holidays, right? They went out there. Himself, his two stepbrothers, and three other cowboys fill up this pickup truck, and they go out to drive out to the main gate. They get there about sort of 7 o'clock in the evening. And they stay there a short while, having a cup of coffee with the gate guard, asking him what his Christmas plans are, etc. And then they decide to head back to the HQ. So they start driving back down the track to get back, and they're coming in to the airstrip from the north of it. So it's right there in front of them. And all of a sudden, they see an object coming in from their left. He said it was really, really low down. He thinks about sort of 50 feet off the ground. So we're talking about much lower than a helicopter would fly at. And it was going very slow. He estimates about sort of 20, 25 miles an hour, which is actually too slow for a normal aircraft to remain airborne. What he described as a glowing yellow cylindrical shaped thing, tic-tac, if you will. I know that's the term these days, isn't it? Tic-tac. It's kind of like an extended, it was longer than a tic-tac, but it was glowing bright yellow. Very, very bright light coming from it. You could see one round white circular porthole window or something in the middle. He thinks there might have been other ones as well, but kind of covered up by the light. Absolutely no tail or wings on this thing. And you have to remember that these guys own this ranch, and they were used to seeing planes coming in, landing, and that sort of thing in all weather conditions at all times of day. So it absolutely was not an aircraft reflecting the sunlight. This was close to them. This was within 100 feet of them. So they park up and they get out of the pickup truck, and it's there in front of them, crossing across the sky really slowly, kind of moving across the head of this thing. And they're absolutely fascinated. They don't have a camera there to film it, unfortunately, but he did a very good drawing of it. Now, as it comes level with them, right in front of them, all of a sudden, the thing erupts into flames, and it's now got flames running across its surface, but it's still moving. It's still moving on the same path, but now it's on fire. No sound or anything, just completely silent with flames billowing all around it. And it starts to move off to the west in the area known as La Mata, which is kind of thick jungle undergrowth, and it's still silent. As it moves off into the distance, all of a sudden, it separates out into chunks and kind of breaks into pieces that rain down on fire into the jungle trees below. No sound, no explosion, nothing. It just comes down, separates, breaks into parts, and it goes down into the trees. Yeah. Well, obviously, you think, well, you want to get out there to where it's come down, but what happened with that is, he said, because of the time of year, there was a lot of vine overgrowth, and it was very hard. There was no roads out there. We're talking about proper jungle, so he couldn't get out there. So they returned to the HQ, obviously fascinated by what they'd seen, and they're absolutely blown away by it. And they thought that was going to be the end of it, that they had this amazing close encounter. This object seemed to explode and come down into the trees, and they couldn't get out there at that point. Move forward to the following day. They had the radio on just to keep them company at the HQ in the background, and all of a sudden comes up a news report. And what it describes is that an area to the southeast of them, there's a town called La Fernando, and an aircraft near to that had been flying northward, and they'd encountered a glowing object which had gone quite close to the plane. They'd actually had to make a detour and land at San Fernando, and he said that the pilot sounded quite frightened by whatever they'd seen. They said that this object was heading north. So this is like southeast of where the ranch is, things going north. That still wasn't the end of the sight. Now, obviously, we have no evidence that took place. But as I said, I dealt with this case in quite a lot of depth with Adrian. I had no inkling that he was making this stuff up. The amount of detail he was giving for all of this was exceptionally good. So we move forward another few days, and it gets to New Year, and the rest of the hands from the ranch, they returned from their holidays. Now, one of the other ranch hands, a lady named Adriana, I think it was. It's in the report. I hate if I got that wrong. But she lived at a village called Gardatinjajas. It's very hard to pronounce. I'm probably pronouncing it all wrong. And it's off to the east of where the ranch is. Yes, she said that a glowing object had come in from the south over the village, had stopped over the village, performed a right angle turn, and then headed off west. And this was seen by numerous people from the village at that point. Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, that puts it directly in route with going towards where they saw it come in. So we were able to trace the potential route of this object, of where it had gone, linking these three things together. Now, Adrian thinks that it must have also maneuvered, because it was at the altitude it was. It had either descended before he'd started seeing it, so maybe it come in like that and they hadn't seen that, or it had maneuvered between the hills, because there were a number of hills off to the east of the ranch.
Did anybody report any materials or finding any debris from anything?
Well, here's the thing. So what happened was, a couple of months later, he said that the vegetation had kind of died down and dried out, and he was able to finally go out there. So one day he headed out there in the pickup truck by himself and had a look around where he thought it had come down, but he couldn't find anything. He said there'd been a lot of vine overgrowth. So it's entirely possible that out there in the jungle right now are pieces of this object buried under soil, buried under vegetation, or whatever.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I don't expect you to give me an answer for this, but why do you think that these things come down if they're so sophisticated? I haven't got an answer. I don't know. It's not a trick question.
So I think that they are still fallible. Yeah. I think that any living species is going to be fallible, and no matter how many times they try to not make mistakes will still happen with technology. And I don't think how advanced a species gets. Like, maybe they're millions of years ahead of us, right? But that still doesn't stop the fact that accidents can happen. You
don't think, or sort of played with the idea that, let's talk about Roswell. Imagine that a craft came down.
Yes.
You don't think it were put down deliberate just to give us that advancement?
No, I think it got hit by knowledge. For me personally, what the evidence points towards with Roswell is that they got hit in the storm. So it happened the night of a heavy storm, and I think that probably back then, this is just theory, yeah. This is nothing.
Absolutely.
We're just shooting it. But I think that it was probably struck by lightning, and back then they weren't ready for what that would do to their craft, and it brought it down. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think it was to pass on the technology. I think if they're doing something intentional, there's nothing to stop them landing properly behind the scenes and having chinwags with our government, which of course there's cases on record.
But why would they want to, Dave? Why would they want to have chinwags with us? I'm not expecting, once again, you to have an answer for that. But why?
Well, maybe.
Why do we think that we're so special that they'd want to have chinwags with us?
Maybe to ask our military to back off. Maybe we strike a deal with them where we don't attempt to shoot them down every 5 minutes and let them go about their business, and they give us some technology. That's just one of you could come up with hundreds of reasons. For
I can throw them at you, and you're just giving your opinion, and it's as valid as mine.
One of the things I find fascinating about these cases is the environmental warnings aspect of contact, which comes up from time to time. I dealt with a lot of cases where it doesn't have this angle in it, but there's numerous cases on record, some famous ones and some ones I've directly investigated, where people are shown visions either in their head or on a screen aboard the craft. They'll literally take them up to a screen and show them, and they'll see images of the world burning and destruction and bombs and forest fires and all that. And there's this kind of heavy environmental message that we're going to destroy ourselves, like with technology or something like that. Now, the people that they're telling, it's a real mystery, because it makes you think, if they wanted to make some sort of change,
why not tell somebody of influence?
Why not tell somebody of influence? Yeah, exactly. Why not tell heads of government, people who can actually do something on a grand scale to change that? But instead, they tell these random individuals this information.
Because, not in my opinion, let's just think in advance, because somebody the person they're telling down their generational line in the far future might if they're laying these plans, it might be beneficial. Let's jump back, and I can only jump back simple. I see Les has disappeared. I hope he comes back. Not that it matters, but it does. But I can only jump back to the latest short we've put on. I talk about the acts in the Bible. I don't talk about much biblical stuff, but where Peter sees a screen drop down from, we'll say from heaven, and on the screen, so we're looking at something like a TV or a projector, all manner of animals just passing through the screen. And you've just been talking about people being given visions. Is anything any different? Do you know?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of interesting passages in the Bible which could well be interpreted as old UFOs.
I see Leather's back. We're getting the thumbs up.
Obviously, it's quite controversial, especially for people with a religious background. But yeah, some of the passages in the Bible do seem to could easily point towards UFO sightings or UFO encounters that people are interpreting as angels or. Yeah.
I suppose that's the sort of knowledge that people had at the time.
Exactly. Yeah, they wouldn't have entertained the notion that this was other kind of intelligent beings either living alongside us or from coming in from outside. So yeah, absolutely.
So before we jump back to the last 10 minutes for Les, and it'll be probably a direction, because I realised we haven't missed the mark here, but you've just got so many cases you can share with us, Dave.
It's difficult.
We know you're coming. Hopefully, if you want to,
happy to come back. Yeah,
but aliens or demons. So what are your views on people? The talk of people saying they've seen demons. Are they seeing aliens, or is it the opposite?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the religious context, I'm agnostic. Yeah, I was brought up as a Catholic.
Yeah.
I'm now agnostic. So, and I think that's because my brain is kind of very heavily influenced by evidence.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, where's the evidence for UFOs?" But there's a lot of the evidence is testimonial based, but it's still evidence, right? But with faith, I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? It's believing without having that evidence. Yeah. So my views on that have changed over time. So I think in order to believe in demons, you've got to believe in all that. You've got to believe in heaven and hell and all that. And I think.
Yeah, but what about the people? Just to push it a little bit further. What about the people who claim? No. Your views are as valid as anybody's, and equally as valid as mine. What about the people who think that because they've had an experience?
Yeah.
So it's not a belief. It's not religion where we believe in it, but it's actually we've had the experience.
Yeah.
They know. What about but they know it's a demon that they've experienced.
So a lot of the time you don't find that linked with UFO cases, with contact cases. It's we're talking more sort of the world of ghosts and specters. So I mean, there's a lot of hauntings of entities that seem to be evil or angry in a certain way, but I don't necessarily that means that means the demons are real. It could well be passed on spirits who are angered and want to cause harm.
And do you think our mindset then, Dave, when as we go into the research or the potential to try and contact these unknown others, talking about the UFO scenario, do you think that can influence the kind of outcome or the experience?
I think through confirmation bias sometimes, maybe. I mean, there's some fascinating elements to quantum physics which have been proven scientifically. That, take for example, the double slit experiment, absolutely stunning. And for those who don't know what that is, do go check it out because it'll blow your mind. There's a lot more going on in the world that we fully understand at the moment. So can our minds directly influence things? I think because of the telepathic element to the contact phenomena, I think absolutely. I think that we can have an influence on what happens.
Well, do you know, Dave, I don't think you've got through like even a cases that you thought you were going to get through and share with us tonight. And if Les gives me the thumbs up, I want to bring him. He's here, so bring him back in for some more questions. Are you okay with that, Dave?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've had some great questions in tonight, and I think you'd agree with that, Dave. And we've got some more coming up. Yeah, let's Tom DeRose. With the way the world is going, do you think it could be AI of the future, of the world, in a way we do not understand right now?
100%. I think there's some of these sightings that we're seeing could absolutely be advanced AI, because we're seeing developments in our AI right now on the planet Earth. I mean, it's a fascinating time to be alive in, with Elon Musk's Tesla bots coming next year and all that. It's happening for real. All the stuff that we're seeing in sci-fi is coming to pass. Hopefully not the stuff in Terminator and that, hopefully not that, not just yet. Yeah. But essentially, if they're far more developed than us, then that makes absolute sense that they would also have developed machine learning and AI to a much greater level as well. Some of the cases are small objects, quite, I would say, unmanned. I mean, you could say there's tiny beings inside them, but there's not much evidence to support that. But small objects that are maneuvering very intelligently and shooting off in a second, this sort of thing, that seem directly linked with the larger craft that are seen and are sometimes seen alongside beings. So I've dealt with a number of cases where small silver spheres have accompanied beings during visitation experiences. So could they be managed by AI? Absolutely. And could some of the beings being seen be advanced AI? Absolutely. But I will say that there's also evidence that that at least in some of the cases, some of the beings that are seen are biological in nature. For example, the claims of the autopsies that took place. I hate to bring back Roswell, in classic case, but obviously they claimed that these beings were autopsied. If they were artificial at that point, I think they probably would have discovered that.
I think thanks for that, Dave. And I think the thing that runs through my mind is, are we driving the AI, or is other entities running the AI for us?
I don't. Are you talking? Sorry, are we talking about UFOs now? We're talking about what's happening with AI in the world today.
Yeah, I'm just going with what Tom DeRose is saying about the AI, and I'm just wondering, are we driving the AI?
Yeah, I think it's people playing with fire,
driving us into a particular point.
I think that when the AI gets more advanced, it could certainly start to bribe people to do certain things. I think it's very, very dangerous territories. I think we're playing with fire, and I think that we are just trying to push it as fast as possible, and it's exponential. And we're seeing it happen right now, and in the future at some point, we might regret making that decision of where we're going with AI. As I said, very, very exciting. I'm absolutely fascinated with the developments in AI. It's really, really interesting to see what's happening and how close they're getting to the singularity, as we call it, and this sort of thing. But it's also very, very dangerous for the human species.
Okay, thanks for that. Probably we could do a whole show talking about AI, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll put this one on screen from Mike Oxbrown. Do you think hypnosis is accurate for experiences for more details?
I think sometimes it can certainly work, as in the Droitwich case that we talked about earlier on, where she was remembering those details. It's difficult. It depends on the situation. Let's say the person being hypnotized has got a vast knowledge of the UFO subject. Let's say they've looked into contact a lot and they know exactly what happens in an abduction experience. And then under hypnosis, they come back with a classic abduction case and, I was on a bench and there were greys around me and all that. How do you know that that's an actual memory of theirs and not their brain just filling in the blanks with what it expects to see? It's very, very difficult to remove those two things. And I've sat in on quite a lot of regressions over the years. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, and they kind of with sort of garbled information and can't sort of sink into that state well enough. I think in certain cases it can work, but it's more dangerous if the person has a big knowledge of knowing what to say. And once they've had those, it's scientifically proven that false memories can sink in, although they usually that's usually from them being forced upon the person. Like they'll tell them something and they'll say it happened, and they've done scientific experiments where that's happened. But a lot of the time the regressive hypnotherapists won't do that. They'll just say what happened next. But it is very hard to dissociate a real experience in that state from something that they might be expecting to happen. It's a difficult, it's controversial, and it's open to people. I work with a regressive hypnotherapist here in Birmingham who helps out with certain cases when people want to go down that route. But I will always warn people that the stuff they come back with, you can't 100% trust as being actual experiences.
You make a great point.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. Gillian Stapleton, a question for Dave and Paul. Why do you think the entities feel a need to be covert and deceitful, both for appearance and their activities?
So for me, it's something I touched on earlier on. I believe it's an ongoing project to what they're doing here, and there's numerous agendas that come out through the contact phenomena that are observed. And this isn't just kind of fanciful thoughts. This is like hundreds and hundreds of cases where the same thing has been observed. The actual observations of these cases on record, so they seem very, very interested in our genetics. They'll take blood, hair samples, etc., skin samples, and that. You've got the hybrid breeding program, which we haven't touched on much, where they're making these hybrid babies and then building this new species. I don't pretend to know exactly why they're building that species. Some people take it down a very negative route. But these agendas, they're ongoing and they've been going on a long, long time, and I don't believe that I think that they, in the same way that we observe animals in nature, so on a nature program, they'll sit back inside hides and they'll watch the animals in the natural environment going about what it's doing. And it could well be that it could be absolutely fascinated, or there's a possibility that they've literally put us here and they are our creators. And again, they're sitting back to see how we develop, potentially changing our genes over long periods of time. Not anything really dramatic, because you could easily take somebody down the lab and say, look, they're half alien now, and that would let the cat out of the bag, right? But let's say they're making slight genetic changes over long periods of time, over numerous generations, because there's a definite family link that goes on through contact. So numerous people down a family tree will experience contact. That's been proven as well. Doesn't always happen, but there's a lot of cases where that is observed. So are they observing how that family line changes over a long period of time, either naturally or potentially changing it in certain ways that we can't detect? Entirely possible.
Interesting, isn't it? I don't know, Les. I mean, we lift a stone up and look at the ants. I think we are the ants under the stone. I think they're observing us, and we are the experiment. And that question's a great question, Gillian, and it's one that we could probably do for half an hour.
Very deep, yeah.
And we've probably got 3 minutes left, but thank you.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the taunting us, aren't they? The taunting us and goading us into doing certain things or reacting certain ways. And
the taunting's the word, but yeah, I kind of know what you mean, Les, but I don't know.
A lot of people have a problem with the lack of consent, because there's a difference between us looking at a rat in a lab, because we can't speak rat, It's proven from the contact cases on record that these beings can communicate telepathically with people in their own language. So therefore, the lack of consent becomes a big problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's part of the reason why the cover-up's going on regarding this, because I don't think people would like to know that was happening.
It's deceitful. Gillian's hit it on head. The deceitfulness, in my opinion. Have we time for another one, Les?
Yeah, well, not so much a question. This from Steve O, but it's stating when you talked about changing your mind on these subjects. Agree about having plenty of changes of mind on these subjects. It's not possible to think the same way one-sided after years of new info I've come and heard. So it obviously changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's such a complex subject that to go down one particular route and kind of hold that view, you'll always find cases on record that don't support that particular viewpoint. It's very vast and very complicated, and I don't think anybody out there really has all the answers.
We're just about at it up, Dave. But do you think it's changed? Do you think, or do you still see some not naming anybody, but do you still see some UFO stroke paranormal researchers stuck in that regime that they started off 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so everybody's free to have their views on this subject, and as I say, I try to remain open-minded towards most of them to some extent. I think that there's a lot of opinions with this because there's so many unanswered questions, and that's what makes it continuously fascinating. That's why I continue to do this. Numerous people over the years have said to me, and this is a big waste of time, Dave. You're not going to get the answers you're looking for. You're not, yeah. And I'm like, that's irrelevant. Once you get past the idea that this is real, it can't fail to be endlessly fascinating. And
that is irrelevant, and you're spot on. It never stops being fascinating. Are you going to come back?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Love to. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, on that note, and thanks for a great show, Dave and Paul. We've got to thank Lee Roscoe tonight for doing the moderating as well as Alison coming on. And we've got another show on Sunday if people want to join us there for the TP Interactive. And I think that we're done, aren't we?
I think we're about done. I hope you've enjoyed.
Right. I've got to thank Tino for the monetary donation tonight, and I apologise for the half a dozen or so questions that I didn't get read out. But probably if Dave comes back on, we'll get those questions read then.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Dave, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
That's been great. Thank you very much.
Bye.